Welcome, guys. If you are just tuning in, we're just waiting for some ads to play for those of you who might be catching ads before we start the show. And if this is after the fact, well, you're probably doing the same thing if you're not watching this live. So welcome to September 30th, last day of the month, the Car Guy and Six Fan Show. We're actually getting down to the end of season 6, Grant, I think, pretty close here. And we're pretty excited to have this episode coming to you guys. And it's just something that's hit me instantly as I was kind of scrolling through Facebook, and I sent it off to Grant and said, I think this is what we should do for Thursday night. So welcome to the Car Guy and Six Fan Show. My name is Jason. I am the car guy, or Olde Carr Guy, of this show. And beside me over here is...
Grant Tommy, a straight Six fan on YouTube, but that makes me Six fan of this show, this operation. And before we just dive right into it and kind of get into this topic, which I do think is going to be a lot of fun, did want to do two things. One, acknowledge the people in the chat, so we'll do that second. But the other thing would be then remind everybody, super chats are noticed here on the Car Guy and Six Fan Show. We do take inventory of that before season's end, and so if you know what that means, then you know what that means. But otherwise, we had a good group talking back and forth well before we went live. So Turlo's Garage, John Trudel, hopefully I said that right. Everything is Broken Garage, Jason's Garage. Then further down we had, I know Gary Mathis jumped in, Mechanics, and at least Greasy Boy Customs for sure. And if I've missed anyone, I apologize. Let's see, the Miniacs, welcome, former guest of ours, King Eric, the greatest of all. No surprise there, and Bandit the Uncle Bobo as well. But Jason, why don't you do a little bit of a setup for what we've got going tonight?
Okay, so most of you guys in the chat were around in the 80s, maybe except for King Eric. I think he's only like 15. But if you were part of the 80s growing up, you knew some of the vehicles, more specifically cars, that were common. And some of the weird, quirky features that these cars had on just everyday, regular driving cars, not your supercars or expensive things, whatever. And now they just don't seem to exist like they used to. So when I was scrolling through Facebook the other day, I came across this ad, and it was basically just this exact topic. And I thought it would be a great idea to share it with you guys. And so that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to go through the whole, put a slideshow together so you guys can see exactly what we're talking about instead of just having to visualize. So while I get the screen share set up, Grant, why don't you
do some tricks?
Yeah, maybe juggle, tell a joke.
Air juggle. I had something I was going to say, but I don't even remember what it was now. It was like the perfect filler, but now I'm just... blubbering on, so thank God for the screen share.
It worked, and it worked quick on the first try. So here's what we're going to do. Grant and I are going to talk about each feature once, and then we're going to get you guys to see what you think in the chat as well. So basically, we're going to call it Extinct Car Features in the Car Guy and Six Fan Show. And as we kind of scroll through the first one, my favorite, probably out of all of them, is the wood grain panel on vehicles. Now, back in the days of the Woodies, they used real wood. Well, come the 70s and 80s, we're talking vinyl stickers. Here you see a 90s, late 80s, early 90s vintage Crown Victoria. Country Squire, I think is what they called them back then. I'm pretty impressed with this particular car. When I saw that, I thought, I don't see a for sale sign, but what do you think, Grant?
Well, the funny part about this whole exercise is I don't know how many of these options actually live on my Fairmont. While I don't have wood grain on the side of the car, they do have I have like a chrome strip that it's the plastic's peeling off of it. So I can very much relate, like as annoying as it is on just this, it's probably 1/2 inch, 3/8 inch strip. As annoying as it is on my car, I can only imagine this whole entire panel starting to peel as time would go on.
And the funny thing is, in hindsight, I probably should have put the Griswold's family truckster up there. It would have been a much better graphic, I think. And everything is broken garage actually mentions it in the chat too. So what do you guys think in the chat about wood grain? Is it a thumbs up or a thumbs down for your recollection? I know Build One More says yes. So I think we're going to move on to the second one. Grant, this one is yours to start off with.
Yeah, so the T-top roof, and what's funny is, like, you know, I think the most iconic T-top, I think it's easy to think, well, probably two. There's probably, you know, IROC Z Camaros probably is probably, for me, like, that's what I think of first. But then, of course, obviously, Smokey and the Bandit, Burt Reynolds, 77 Trans Am. But it is amazing, like, the older I got, the more I realized, like, how many people were doing it. Like, even Fox Body Mustangs, like, everybody was copying this. You've got a Monte Carlo up there on the screen. And so I'm curious, especially those who've actually had a T-top car. I know they're notorious for leaking. And what I'm curious about is, like, where exactly do they leak? Everywhere? Or was it always a specific spot? So I kind of would be curious to see that. Maybe, you know, Jason, but in the chat, if people want to drop in.
Well, I know from experience, I've never had one, but a buddy of mine did. And it was actually, it wasn't a Monte Carlo, but it was a G-body. Olds Cutlass, and right in the corners, right up near the vents or the sun visors where they would come down, that's where the water would kind of drip off. That was tended to be the low point on these cars. So if they got full of water and the little things got plugged up, sometimes they would leak inside. And of course, being exposed to the sun was never a great idea anyway. Those rubbers being up there, they would just rot and crack, and all of a sudden, down she come. But yeah, I only put the Monte Carlo because probably one of my most favorite iconic cars of the 80s.
Well, I like I like the idea of them, and that was actually that's what I guessed is where they leaked was. And so if you think about how, especially that's a unibody, those are unibodies, right?
Yep.
G bodies, yeah. So the way the whole car is gonna, like, the weak point now, you know, it's gonna pivot right at that bar. So it's going to want to do that. So that's where I would guess that it was going to leak. And so that got me thinking. I remember when we were shopping for my wife's Mustang, and, like, we wanted a convertible, and but they don't even put sunroofs in Mustangs anymore. And it's like, you know, because my thinking was like, well, if we can't find a convertible for the right price, like, I'd still take a sunroof, but they don't even make it. And I was thinking, like, you know, if Chevy was doing a Targa top, at least on the new Camaro, I bet you those would sell really well right now. And, you know, it's sort of the same idea of the T-top. It's just you get rid of that middle bar. But how do you stiffen up? I think the trick is, how do you stiffen the car up well enough to when you take that off that you wouldn't have leaking problems?
Well, I mean, they do it with convertibles, right? So they seem to have perfected that over the years. But nevertheless, we do... I think I saw something in the comments there. Luke from Coastal Auto Action says, clean the drains and use Vaseline as a water repellent. And I've heard of that before, even on convertibles around that front seal. It helps keep that rubber moisturized, and no water can get in there as well. Next one up for bids is velour seats. And this is something that when I was growing up, my folks always had Buick LeSabres, 2-doors, and Olds 88s, and these were the seats that you had in these cars, and that's what I remember growing up with these big old 2-door boats is the velour seats. And nowadays you just don't get it. You've got these cheap, crappy material that literally stains with water, and very, very hard to keep clean. Unless you're going with something like leather. But yeah, this particular one looks like a 2-door Cadillac, maybe an Eldorado or something like that,
with a nice little gold in the third brake light. Probably has some hydraulics in the trunk, some batteries, and some hydraulics. That's what I'm thinking as well, if we're gonna take a stab at it. Yeah, no, and this kind of reminds me of our interview 2 weeks ago. You know, you talked about the Oldsmobile Delta 88s. Yeah, this is right up that avenue for sure.
And, you know, really, you can't talk about the 80s and velour seats without
tufted seats.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that wasn't enough, like, then let's get grandma's pillow making skills and sew those right on top of the on top of the seat. The other thing is, like, I think that goes hand in hand with the tough seats. Then, especially in a lot of the back seats, they had such a, like, that center console just like became a giant marshmallow of sorts, and just like, as they always look worn out, probably almost from day one. But man, just now picture adding 40, 35, 40 years on top of that, and how gross a lot of these probably look now.
And as the youngest of 3 kids growing up, I always got sat in the back seat and, of course, in the middle. So when you're sitting in the middle, you're sitting on the hump, and there's absolutely no cushion in that middle seat at all. So even as the shortest, I was always sitting there with my, kind of felt like my head was hitting the ceiling off sideways there. But yeah, the tough seats and the velour seats really do kind of go together. Guys, go ahead and leave us in the comments, whether you're watching here in the chat live or after the fact, some of your favorite memories of these tough seats or velour seats from the 80s.
And while Jason's going on the next one, I did just want to give a shout out again to Melissa Nunya, doing what she does best and promoting all of us in the chat. So definitely not going unnoticed. So what we got next, Jason?
So up next, we've got the classic half roof or Landau roof and vinyl roof. And I thought, when I was looking through the pictures for vinyl roof, I come across Buddy ripping the vinyl roof off of his Caprice. And I thought that very suiting, because in most cases what happened, as you can see there by the C-pillar, they were prone to hold water down in those seams. So they would rot out your roof and leak water inside there. But if you guys didn't know, my Chrysler Cordoba had the half roof, or the Landau roof, from the B-pillar back. And I got rid of it for the same reason. It was cracking, and it wasn't in very good shape underneath.
The Fairmont, this is feature number 1 that, we could start tallying up. Neil Fairmont has one of these. It's got it's actually in pretty good shape. So I'm not going to touch it, but I've always thought, so I want to throw this idea out there to you, Jason. Like, if it originally came with a vinyl roof and you had a car, again, in my our odd body era, that, 73 to, we'll call it 80, 83 decade. If you yanked one off, doing like a rhino liner coating to like take place of it, I've always wanted to do that, just as I don't know, just again, like, the premise has always been with my cars, like, if you want to experiment and try something, you're not going to screw up a 78 Ford Fairmont. So that's kind of always been my take on that.
And if Cletus is still in the chat, maybe he can verify whether or not this picture was taken in Arkansas. I'm pretty sure it probably was. I mean, Buddy's standing on his car in his bare feet, ripping the vinyl roof off of his rusty car. I mean, can somebody tell me what's going on here?
Cletus would definitely be your guy, because I think I see a little bit of a mullet there too as well.
What do we got next, Grant?
So, automatic seatbelts. And I was trying to remember, I felt like I had told the story of my great aunt about these a couple episodes ago, and I just couldn't remember exactly what it was. But yeah, if you hadn't heard that story, I guess she was, it's probably in her 70s, did not like this sensation. So her solution was scissors and snip. So she didn't have the shoulder belt. Yet the little thing up top would still, follow the track, right? So with just like that much seatbelt hanging from it. So, I guess I would guess this probably coincides with probably the first major campaign about, public safety of seatbelts save lives, that this was like, someone's like, oh, well, we'll just force their hand and we'll make sure that they're always wearing it. You still had to do the lap belt, of course, but I don't know. It never... I think this was also the first sign of society being like, okay, how lazy are you if you can't throw your own seatbelt on? But what say you, Jason, about automatic seatbelts?
Well, I could stand corrected, but maybe some of the guys who are Canadian in the chat can help me out here. We had seatbelts attached to the doors, but I almost think that we didn't have automatic seatbelts on Canadian cars. Maybe, again, somebody can, Dustin, I think Dustin's in the chat. Maybe he can tell me for sure. But nevertheless, seatbelts on the doors. I think the Cavalier Z24, Z24, whatever you guys call it, had it kind of built onto the door. So when you closed it, the buckle come up and smack you in the face. But there was other cars, and yeah, like I've seen a few of these in the past, like the little Escorts, the Honda Accords. I think somebody mentioned had these on them, and man, they were terrible. You try and just sitting in the car, they would just automatically choke you before anything had them. Probably one of my classic favorites, and again, I found it on an IROC. I saw it on a few Mustangs, but I guess this is an IROC, but it's a Camaro. Is the rear window louver. You used to see them on just about everything from the pimped out panel vans or pedo vans, I guess they call them now. But, you know, even today in, did I just say that? Even today, Jason from Streetcar Culture can kind of attest to the fact that in Australia, they're still actually using blinds, I believe, in the rear windows. And in North America, we use the window louvers.
Yeah, you were saying they showed up on just about everything. The first thing that came to my mind outside of the Camaro was like a Pontiac Fiero. Is the next probably, I don't know, most likely to sport those. But yeah, there's even a portion of the current Mustang crowd. You know, that was like a 70s Mustang look, like some of those like Boss 302s. They would put them on that. But you'll never find me with window louvers, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. You know, and this, I'm with Wood and Metal Garage. He says, I like them on someone else's car, you know, and it's one thing to see it on a car. And again, if you're a product of the 80s, I guess I might be more of that, because in the 80s, 85, I was 10 years old. So, you know, seeing these cars now with those on it looks normal, you know, because you grew up with that. You grew up seeing that. And I think King Eric, the greatest, said something, they're hard to clean. Some of them actually had kits where you could kind of prop up the louver and clean your window and then clip it back down. The biggest problem that I saw with them was they were rattle traps, because they were made of metal, not plastic like they would be likely today. But surprisingly enough, even the Yugos had a rear window louver kit. Let's see if I get back to my screen here. Next one.
All right, well, that brings us to Gullwing doors, and I guess this one probably needs a little bit of an asterisk, because the way we were trying to handle it was most of these are just features that would be common or everyday on most model cars, and you know, Gullwing doors still kind of have made their way through history, of course, on your exotics like your Lamborghinis, and well, I guess those aren't Landau, because those flip up, but
yeah,
you know, some of the supercars have them, but yeah,
I guess what came to mind was the DeLorean and the
right.
Brooklyn were the two of this era that had them, that weren't per se, you know, luxury or supercars by no means. And like, I think you can still get them on a Mercedes today, and some of the other ones. But nevertheless, I think it's a pretty neat feature that really does need to come back. And I think, you know, some of these cars like Tesla and Mercedes are doing it and doing it well. I mean, I don't like the Model X myself, but hey, it is what it is.
Well, and Jason from Streetcar Culture, you know, he mentioned made the Mercedes reference as well in the chat. And, you know, they're the ones who, if I'm not mistaken, are the ones who were the first to use it. Like, I think early 60s, there was I don't know the model because I don't know my Mercedes, but you know, it was actually a super, you know, it's like late 50s or early 60s that they first started doing this.
Next one is tribute cars. There used to be a point in time where a tribute car like a Hurst Olds or a Turbo Trans Am or like an Indy pace car or a Daytona 500 pace car was a tribute car. It was something that was come from the factory with a special scheme. You just don't see that too much anymore. And it is something that I miss. And here, you know, again, I chose these two particular cars because, well, I mean, who doesn't like a G-body? And with the classic styling of the 4-cylinder Trans Am with the ugly wheels, and I think that one probably does have T-tops too. I can't see it close enough, but
That was a 4-cylinder car?
It was a 4-cylinder turbo, yeah.
Really? I guess I'm not familiar with that. I remember they had like, what was it, a 301 cubic inch V8 turbocharged right around 1980. But yeah, the other ones that come to mind, of course, like you said pace car, but the Indy 500 pace car is pretty common. I know that's a fairly sought after. I think 79 Mustang, they had one. Yeah, I'm trying to think what's the latest one you can think of. I think latest meaning like most recent. I feel like Pontiac did one with their Trans Am, like in like around 98, between 98 and 2002.
They may have, and I know the Monte Carlos had a Dale Earnhardt edition and a Jeff Gordon edition. I know there was a couple of those type of things, and I think Thunderbirds even had a Bill Elliott edition back in the day, but nothing recent. I just want to clarify something. Dustin says that we're talking faults. I'm not sure what he's meaning faults about, whether it's the 4-cylinder or the 301. He says you're thinking of a Mustang SVO. Maybe he can clarify that in the chat for us as we go on to the next one.
Two-tone paint. And Jason and I were talking about this particular image off air before we went on. And I was admitting to, I love my offbeat hot rods. I love my Fox bodies, but I don't ever picture myself building, sorry, King Eric, the greatest of all, but these blinkers that stretch halfway down the front fender, I just can't do it. But yeah, two-tone paint. You know, Chip Foose, of course, brought that back in the, we'll call it mid 2000s to maybe early 20-teens, but definitely a little more tasteful than this. And yeah, Jason, why don't you think we see two-tone paint anymore?
Well, I think to some degree two-tone paint doesn't exist due to, I don't want to say complexity, but that extra step involved in painting vehicles today. There's a reason why a lot of fleet vehicles are just simply white, because it's the cheapest paint to color, cheapest color to paint, and it's so widely used for, you know, advertising on panel vans and cop cars and ambulances, whatever you have. The cost savings of not going two-tone is likely the biggest reason why they quit doing it. Yes, we saw this up into the late 90s and early 2000s in the Chevrolet and some of the Ford pickups with the fender flares were painted a different color type of thing. Again, this is just something I think that's gone away simply because of cost. And the Bandit says that this car is ugly, and I 100% agree, but maybe down the road, the Yugo may see some two-tone paint coming up.
Ooh.
CBs and car phones, like, this is going from one generation jumping right into the next. So, you know, back in the 70s was big to have CB radios and 8 tracks, of course, built into the car. And now then it's kind of, you jump into the late 80s, early 90s, and the big built-in phone. This one, I think if you look closely, you'll see that it says Lexus on the bottom of the handle. So, you know, some of your high-end cars came with the cell phone built right into the car, which I think is actually pretty cool.
Yeah, or what I'm most accustomed to from the early 90s, mid 90s, the bag phone. If you couldn't get it built into the console, then you carried it around in that bag.
Yeah, and actually, I think my very first phone was a bag phone, and to the point, I think that was in my Sonoma, wasn't it? I had that bag phone. I had it mounted. It wasn't a bag. It was a bag phone, but it was like a conversion. So it had like a little pedestal, and you mounted it right to the hump of the floor. So their phone just sat there, all cool like. And I was like, "Yeah, I got a cell phone in my car."
It was big time back then.
It was. It was the early 90s, and it was like everybody wanted a phone.
I see Jason from Streetcar Culture was talking about his dad's RX-7 had a functioning analog brick phone in it. So Zach Morris with a rotary motor. So bench seats, and I mean this one This one you kind of probably have to throw an asterisk at a little bit too. Obviously, you know, you can still buy the bottom of the line utility truck and get a bench seat, but we're talking about a 4-door car having a full bench seat in the front. Like, I'm trying to think, Jason, how, again, this is another good one. When do you think the last time they did that was? I mean, probably Crown Vics were still doing it.
Yeah,
late
so
90s.
Both, well, even into the 2000s, both of mine have the bench seat. It's got the fold down armrest in the middle. So one's an 03, one's an 04. So maybe the Crown Vics and Grand Marquis stopped doing that when they stopped being produced to the public in the.
But is yours a like 40-60 split seat though? Like, does the driver's side move independently?
No, it's I don't know, what is it? No, it's split right down the middle because the armrest is 2 different armrests.
Okay. Well, so it's still not a traditional, like, I mean, full, like,
no,
they're on different
not a
sliders.
Full bench seat. And like I said, you know, if I had to go back in time to figure out when because you got to remember, this looks like a CARR, if I'm not mistaken, maybe looking at that steering wheel. But that was a small car to have a bench seat in.
I laughed when he said CARR just because, like, I mean, honestly, the 80s, you know, are so blasé. Like, there's no it could probably be from any of the big 3 manufacturers because everything was always so bland. You know what I mean? Like the door panel, that it looks definitely like it could be in a Ford or a GM for sure. But I mean, I trust you. It probably is a Chrysler product, but that's just how bad it was in the 80s and how lack of ornament there was.
So we've shown you 3 different interiors to vehicles tonight. The bench seat in this car, if we go clear back to the tufted seats and the velour seats, what's the common theme here is that if you got a red car, you got a red interior, maybe a black car with red interior, blue on blue. And if you come back here to this red one, you know, it was probably a silver car or a white car with a red interior. You don't see colored interiors very much anymore today. 90% of the vehicles made have a dark gray or black interior. Once in a while, you're lucky enough if you see tan or two-tone, but like you don't have the color options today that you did, you know, back 25, 30 years ago.
I will spot the automotive manufacturers today, though. Like, they're getting a little better with like their piping and stuff. Like, you'll see oftentimes like that might be like a bright orange or something, and then some in the pattern in the inset, you know. So I think they're doing some kind of cool things nowadays, even though, like you said, the canvas is mostly black or dark gray.
And mechanics makes a very good point. You know, if you had a bench seat and you could drive around with your honey, you know, sitting beside you while you were driving around, that was pretty cool too. Remember those days, hon? Sitting in the bench seat, you were sitting in the middle. She's listening to us tonight. Oh, let's see. What do we got next on the slideshow here?
Headlight wipers. So this is a great one because, and I think maybe we could maybe extend this category a little bit, Jason, to flip lights as well, because that was a pretty gnarly, bodacious 80s, 90s car feature that happened quite often. Because as you can probably tell, that looks like a Mercedes front grille. Didn't see the headlight wipers on a ton of cars outside of the luxury level. I mean, I'm sure there were some, but
well, and even a lot of your North American stuff didn't have it.
Yeah.
Right. So Volvos had it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. Volvos would be a recent offender or a common offender of that. But yeah, flip lights. I remember my cousins. They're about 10 years older than me, 10 years older than me. So I was born in 85. So they had Honda Preludes were their kind of thing, and they all had flip lights. But
don't forget the Fiero and the Firebirds.
Yep.
You know, Corvettes. These was a lot of even the early Sunbirds had flip up. Flip up headlights.
Miatas.
So, yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Back when Miatas were real ugly. Next, we have the classic Continental kit where they extended the rear bumper and they put the spare tire outside the vehicle, supposedly for convenience sake to make things a little bit more roomy in the trunk, but all it did was get in the way.
Well, and the ones that are even worse for me are the ones that were actually molded into the trunk, like so that, and there never was a tire behind there. It just had the shape. Like I think Diplomats had them, and or the New Yorkers. What
Yeah,
else?
well, the Continentals had them. The
The
Mark,
Thunderbirds.
whatever the
Yeah.
Mark 7s. No, what were they back then? They would have been like the Mark 3 or 4.
Well, even sevens still had them. They had
Yeah,
well, even the eights, Mark eights had them. They just were very more. They were subtle.
yeah.
Then it's like stop doing it. Like,
But just remember, guys, these were kits that did not come. This particular type of kit did not come from the factory. This is something somebody had to pay extra for. Think about that for a second. And in this particular case, some jerk from New Jersey decided to put his kid's picture on the back of it. How do you suppose I feel today?
well, I suppose you don't know the story about the kids. Hopefully, they didn't die at that young age. So
Okay,
maybe it was the tribute. Yeah,
I take that back. Somebody in there said, "Was it a dealer installed?" It was a dealer installed option, but it was still it was an extra you paid for. And then there's the classic
power
antenna.
As if they didn't get bent enough as it was. Let's make them automatic, so when they do get bent, we just wear out a motor and then they stay up. Like unless you're probably under the age, I don't know, 7, it's not cool to anybody.
Well, and then let's shift them up to Canada, where it's frozen and icy for 4 or 5 months out of the year, and yeah, let's see that work. Dustin says his car still has one, his Honda Accord. That's pretty cool. I liked the power antenna. I again, like you said, unless you're under 7. When I was a kid, I used to think that was the coolest thing ever. Next to the first Lincoln I ever saw with automatic dimming rearview mirror, I thought that was pretty cool too. The engine turn dash. I like. If you guys have ever seen the dash in my Cordoba, this was what you got when you ordered the special 300. You got the engine turn dash, which was the instrument cluster over on the right hand side, the passenger side of the dash, and the console. This, to me, was classic.
Yeah, this is actually, like, as far as a look goes, like, I have no problem with this. I like the knurled kind of stuff. I mean, this one might be a little more like tight and intense than what I'm accustomed to, but no, I love the knurled stuff. Just taking like a wire brush on your cup brush on your drill press and just coming down, making a swirl mark and just move it. I like that look.
So I know there was other vehicles out there that had the engine turn dash, and I'm looking at this particular car, and I can be honest with you, I don't even think I know what it is. It might be something European, but the Trans Ams, I think, had that.
Yep, that's what I would guess, actually.
Yeah, maybe it is a Trans Am. I don't know.
I mean, 160 mile an hour speed limit, and
yeah, but an 8,000 RPM? No, I don't know.
Well, red line's at 5,700. I don't know.
Yep, but anyways, I think it was pretty cool, and like I said, with the Cordoba having that on the dash today, I think that's a pretty cool feature.
So Irving Johnson in the chat, he says, "Don't forget ashtrays, if that counts." And I will say yes-ish. In my Fairmont, I've got 2 of them. They're in the back of each of the seats, and that's always like funny to me that like, so even the people in the back were expecting to probably be smoking. Like we still have some semblance of them today in the center of most cars still, but.
Well, and back in 2000, when I was selling brand new GM stuff, it was actually in 2000, it was still an option to either have an ashtray delete or add an ashtray to your car. So, 20 years ago or so, it was about that time where things were switching to, smoking wasn't good and they weren't making it as convenient to do so inside your car. So The guys that made those little cups with the little funnel going down that you could put your cigarettes out in, those guys made a fortune after the manufacturer stopped making ashtrays. This one's for you, Grant.
Yeah, door rub strips. So I think we're on third. Well, okay, well, no, we haven't gotten to the third feature. This is the second feature because the Fairmont definitely has door rub strips. That's what the plastic's like peeling off of right now. It's like a clear plastic over the fake chrome and the door rub strip. But yeah, man, I think Ford probably led the market in this category. I think, I don't know. What say you, Jason?
Well, I think this is something that kind of carries in a little bit to the final slide that we'll get to here in a minute. But it was a safety feature that, if you're opening up your car door or somebody else was opening their door on you, you weren't going to get those dents or dings. It was to protect the car. Sometimes they looked cool. Like if you look back at near the rear wheel on this Mustang, you can see where it had GT written in there. Sometimes they were functional. Sometimes they hid your turn signals in there. It was something that looked good maybe when it was new, but after 20 or 30 years, when the adhesive starts peeling off, because they weren't smart enough to use body clips, it looks like crap. And once you took them off, they never went back on. And like I said, it kind of ties into another style of a safety feature, and that is the impact bumper. Now,
yes,
on this one here, it looks like this BMW's got a fat lip. But I dare each and every one of you at some point this evening to go to Google and type in the words impact bumper and tell me that the first 400 images that come up aren't of a Porsche with those great big bumpers sticking out just like this BMW.
Oh yeah, I can picture that '80s poster right now of a Porsche with them. Yep. But
yep.
Oddly, like that's kind of part of their profile, though. Like, that might be about the only one that if you tighten the bumpers on, it would. I don't know. I dare say almost lose a little bit of its aesthetic.
Well, I mean, either you liked it or you didn't. But just as the Miniac said, it was something that that America. They wanted to see a little bit more safety in these European vehicles coming over. And I mean, you look at the Yugo, same thing. It's got those bumpers that stick way out. Of course, they weren't necessarily impact bumpers because they didn't have any absorption to them, but they stuck out quite a ways. And that is something that on some vehicles, it just made them look.
Well, then there's the bumperettes like I have that are just tacked on the outside, but. Yep.
So that's it for what we had. Just because we may not have covered everything, if you're watching this now, go ahead and throw it in the chat of something that we may have missed that we didn't add to the slideshow. But if you're watching this after the fact, after the live show, go ahead and leave your idea down in the comments section to tell us, what did we forget?
Yeah, we certainly couldn't have covered it all, but as you guys know, what is the custom here on the Car Guy and Six Fan shows, we always also like to throw out a tip or trick, something we've learned along our way, and we're usually asking that of our guests. But I thought we'd take a little bit of a different spin on that here this week, since there is no guest, and you've probably heard Jason and I kind of give the same tips and tricks over time about what we found. So. Jason, I'll let you start, but so what is something maybe that you're currently working on that you really think will, help elevate your channel? What is kind of the ongoing thing you're focusing on your channel right now?
I guess it's hard to say because it's always an evolution when you're creating and trying to build yourself a channel or build yourself an identity on YouTube. And one of the things that I have found that has worked in the past is a little bit of, I gotta be careful how I say it. I don't make myself sound like an idiot, but is a little bit of stupidity, a little bit of real mistakes, and making sure that not making sure. But when you do make a mistake when you're filming, that you don't always have to edit them out. Sometimes they're funny. And I find that, with my last video with the Yugo trying to do a burnout, I was really trying. And I think that the failure aspect of it is what made for a decent video. And a lot of comments came out of that. And, the big thing is we have the ability to edit out our mistakes a lot of times. But I've been finding lately that, if I just leave them in there, sometimes it does make for better video. Grant, how about you? Is there something that's been working or not for you that you seem to be gaining on? Or
yeah, well, before I get there, I just wanted to tag on to what you said. If we stole a term from our interview last week, leaving in the video something like "my chair's on fire."
What could possibly go wrong?
So, if you guys missed the interview with Waylon Wire, Sold Iron last week, definitely want to do that. And both Jason and I, we take the Car Guy and Six Fan Show, and we have a playlist, and no matter whose channel it's on, like the playlist on either of our channels will show every previous episode. So check it out wherever you're more comfortable checking that out, but you don't want to miss that one. For me, it's I'm trying as hard. I mean, I'm doing a bad job this week, but trying to get myself in habit of, it's a little bit off of YouTube because it's Instagram. But, as you and I, Jason, have both talked, like for us, it's the best supporting social media for our YouTube. But trying to be consciously effort to make at least one post a day on Instagram. So there's just like a constant, everybody's getting something shown up in their feed from me every day of the week. And it's really not that hard to do, even when you get busy, but it's almost like, I think if you sat down and just wrote out a schedule for the week of what you kind of wanted to post, I think it's a really simple thing that I think really pays big dividends and is one of the best ways to engage people and get them over to YouTube if they're not already over there.
And to piggyback on that, I know that we get a lot of guys who are in the chat that are also YouTubers that may or may not already do this, but when you're filming, I find it a great opportunity to stop filming for a second, take a few pictures halfway through of what you're doing, use those as teasers through the week before your actual video goes up. That way people can kind of see a little bit behind the scenes and understand that, this is what we're up against if we made a mistake, and then they can tune into the video to see how you resolved it, whatever the case may be. But always making sure that you're getting pictures. You guys have been seeing this week that I've been posting pictures of the progress on the garage. So, there's always something to take a picture of, to share of something that's happening in your channel. So, tying those two together. And I agree with Grant that Instagram for me as well seems to be the best hand-in-hand platform to lead into each other, so that you can kind of promote over here. They can go watch over here. And even in my YouTube videos, I started making sure that I've been letting people know you can go check me out on Instagram, so you can see some of these behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to get lost in it too, where like, I've said this a ton of times, but I'll say it again. Like, I'm a less is more guy. I would rather just have one other thing. But because I want to reach the people out there like that, then that means I need to have like all of the platforms. But so it's really easy, but how I'll spin on that, it's really easy to get lost in thinking you have to grow all of the platforms, and you don't. It's just not possible. You'll just lose focus on, like, pick the one that's going to be your best vehicle to go somewhere. And for us, that's YouTube. And then pick your best supporting one and really focus on those two.
So a few minutes ago, we asked a question. I guess I missed a super chat in there somewhere. How did I miss
everything
that?
is broken garage. Just dropped one in. Oh, well, I was probably talking for like 7 minutes in a row.
Well, maybe, yeah. So we asked a question a few minutes ago to you guys. Is there something that we forgot in the slideshow that we didn't add? So I just want to go through the chat and bring a few of them out. And my buddy Dustin had mentioned basically the cars that talk to you. And Dustin Caldwell, in the chat there, him and I grew up in the same town, and we have a same mutual friend, and his dad had a Chrysler New Yorker that would tell you when the door was ajar or low fuel or keys are in the ignition, different things like that. So that's something that he had mentioned that I saw in there. I think I seen somebody say the floor had a high beam dimmer. You just kind of tap it with your foot. Hand crank sunroof. Vent windows is something you don't see in vehicles anymore. Antennas in the windshield. Actually, that's actually more common, I think, than most people think. There's a lot of vehicles that still don't have antennas. They're built them either into the side windows in the SUVs or into the back glass with your defroster. Those are actually still popular. Hand crank sunroofs, Dustin Sabo says. Am I missing any in there? Manual crank windows, vent windows.
Well, I know in the article you shared earlier this week, Jason, there was a few that I hadn't even ever known about. I guess in Toyota minivans back in the 80s, there was like an ice chest in the back.
Yeah.
It's like, what? You know, and then like if you go way back to like I think your Lincolns and Cadillacs and maybe even Edsel, maybe they were doing the push button transmissions there in the late 50s. Like that was kind of a goofy one that never took off. And then wasn't there some minivan probably in the last decade at least that they built in like a little vacuum cleaner in the back, like an integral vacuum?
Yeah, who did
there was
that?
Was it VW or I don't know. It just seemed like, you know, it was very real and relatable, right? Like kids dropping M&Ms between the seats or whatever in a minivan, like pretty believable. But it's like, I don't know that we need to be building. Like who's gonna ever dump that bag? You know, if it's molded into the side of your panel.
Gary Mathis says glass headlights, steel beam headlights. You know, they stopped putting those in vehicles. I know the GMC and Chevy work trucks up till not that long ago, but in actual cars themselves, they haven't been around at least for a long time. I can't remember the last time a car had steel beam headlights in them. That's a good one.
I see a couple people talking about car bras.
Yes,
that's a pretty good one.
Yeah, when I married my wife, she had a I forget what year it was, 89 or 88 Z24 or Z24. Had a little bra across the top of the hood.
Thanks. I was not going to connect the dots.
Well, yeah, I was. You know, I just wanted to make sure that you and the rest of you has figured that out. And I know Jason from Streetcar Culture knows that it's a Z24, right? Yeah. So that goes right back to another 80s thing. You know, having those bras as on the car to help protect the hood.
I'm going to derail this one, but I have to ask. So, did they sell the albums under ZZ Top then up there? Is the music group known as ZZ Top?
Oh, look, Wyatt Bush is in the chat. Hey, Wyatt, thanks for joining the no, they were ZZ Top here as well, but that was because that was their name, right?
Yeah,
that's what they went by.
You just couldn't correct them. I did see, you know, more than once. I'm pretty sure it's the same person, but the bandit, the most recent, is wanting to throw out there curb feelers. But
yeah, curb feelers were a big thing back in the 40s, 50s, even up into the 60s. But those I don't think necessarily were factory options, were they? I don't know. I'd have to go back and check.
So I'll be honest, like I don't know if I even know what curb feelers are. I always just thought it was just your sidewall of your tire just stuck out so far. Like the way they wheel versus tire with that's. But I take it that's not what it is.
Yeah, they were so you could cut into the curb, and if you heard the curb feeler scraping, like it was a pretty high pitched noise, then you knew you could cut your wheel back so you wouldn't rub your tires on your curb, I guess is what you could.
So where were they mounted at then?
On your bumper.
Okay,
Either on your bumper or on the lower part of your fender. I've seen them there before. That's why I know, not because I'm that old. Oh, Dustin Sabo says, why does he know more about this than I do? It's because you're a car nerd, Dustin. That's why. You really want to know? I said it. I think that just about ties up the show for this week. I guess we will end it with things that are up and coming on each other's channel. Grant, do you have something that you want to share with the group that's coming up for Straight Six Fan?
Yeah, well, if everything goes the way I think it will, there will be episode 3 on the getting my first vehicle back in my ownership. So hopefully that's the next episode is what I think it's going to be, but we shall see.
And tomorrow morning, first thing at 7:30, they're going to be here. They're pouring the concrete for the new shop. Pretty excited about that. I've been telling people all week I haven't been sleeping very well. I feel like a kid at Christmas time, with just waiting for that Christmas morning to see things happening and getting some progress. So been a lot going on around the yard with the new driveway and the pad prep for the garage. I'm pretty excited about it. And tomorrow is a big day for concrete. So I'm not going to be putting that in my next video just because I'm going to do a compilation video of the entire shop build. So that might even come out in a couple of months time, but I'm going to be filming it. And we've got some more engine building going on the 440. So that likely will be the next video, but probably won't come out till early next week.
Well, with that, I think we'll shut it down. But Jason, you want to click the little scroll button at the bottom as we...
Oh, yes, I didn't do that at all.
Remind everybody that the big guest for season 6 here is Steve Darnell of Welder Up is going to be our guest next week. So you don't want to miss that. Absolutely. And if we could just all ask each and every one of you, if you're excited about it, please do share that excitement on social media because we want to have a good crowd for Steve. Busy guy. We don't really necessarily expect that he's going to blast it out. So we really, and I've watched him on someone else's live stream. It's like, wow, there's only 26 people here, or whatever. Like, it's Steve Darnell. So we want it to be a good crowd, and we want you all to have fun. And
last week, I believe, Grant, correct me if I'm wrong, if our new record for attendance is 141.
I'll have to. I know I wrote that down. I want to say 147.
Okay, well, it's over 140. So let's let's share this out. Let's get the crowds built up. There's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't have over 100 people on this show. I've been doing it for 3 years now. We've had lots of people coming and going, lots of great guests, and lots of faithful followers like yourselves, out there. So anytime you see a promo go out for the Car Guy and Six Fan Show, please share that out. Because I think if we're going to continue to do this and keep, bringing guests and working hard at these slideshows and trying to entertain and put on the show that we're doing, it's going to be worth it to everybody, not just to Grant and I, but to everybody that's jumping in and joining and seeing and hearing and listening to what the guests have to say. So we'll continue doing it if you guys continue to help us, and you're doing a great job so far. So thank you.
And I think everybody can relate to it. No matter how big or small you are, a lot of us, we have a network, whether you think you do or not. And so when we get these big guests, like, we had Dylan McCool, we've had Kevin from Junkyard Digs, we've had Flying Sparks Garage, and now at Welder Up, their circles are pretty tight too. And they talk to each other. So, if we don't show them a good showing, like, you never know what conversations they're having about us down the road. So that's why we want the good crowds.
Yep. So having said that, guys, thank you so much for tuning in this Thursday evening. It's been a blast. It's been fun going back in time, talking about these features on these cars that we all love so much. So thanks for being here, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Car Guy and Six Fan Show. Grant, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Well, we'll end it like I do my recent videos. To all my Six fans out there, thanks for watching.